PhDs are very much jobs, like they are jobs in the industry, right? So there are the university is paying you to be there and to do specific work, and there are expectations in return, right? So the expectations from a PhD program is that you are going to file for patents, you are going to do technology transfers to the industry, you're going to do publications. All of these generate revenue for the university or for you as well in some form or another. And you might even consider doing startups after that. So one of the main things that is expected of a PhD is that they have some amount of leadership and boldness in their approach to what they're doing. And now, how do you get into one of these programs? So I'll start with the master's program, which is probably what is relevant to you now. So as we earlier discussed, that not everything that you learn is covered in your curriculum. So you do a lot of things through your research projects and your extracurricular work. And this is where you can separate yourself from the crowd. So these are very, very important. So if you're enrolling, if you're trying to get admission into a master's program, what is expected is that you know at least some of the state-of-the-art methods. So you might, so these were not covered in your basic curriculum, but you worked on some projects that were outside your regular hours, and you have a decent knowledge of these methods. And you have some personal vision of why do you want to do your master's? Like, what is it that you want to do after your master's? Right. So this is what becomes essentially your statement of purpose. Like when you're trying to get an admission into a master's program, you'll typically give in your CV and your grades and everything, and a letter, a statement of purpose letter, where you have to explain why are you seeking admission into a master's program, and how you are how you have some qualities of excellence in some regard that make you suitable for this program, right? And so that is essentially what you need to get into a master's program. To get into a PhD program, again, the same thing. You need to have some knowledge that is above and beyond what you were taught in your courses. So again, some work or some knowledge of the cutting edge methods. And this other quality is quite important for looking at PhD admissions, is that you need to have a strong entrepreneurial drive to do something, and you should have some leadership traits. Like you should be bold in what you're trying to do. You should have enormous passion for the field that you're trying to do your PhD in, and some form of personal vision, which is slightly different from the master's program, because in the master's program, you're typically only writing a personal vision of of what you want to do 2 years down the line. So it's relatively short term. Whereas for a PhD, the personal vision is typically slightly longer term, as in it's what you want to do 5 years and 10 years from now. So what are the fields that you want to work on? What are the things that you want to learn in order to get there? And some kind of, as I said, some kind of entrepreneurial insight in terms of why do you want to work on this field, and how is it important from an economic perspective of where it fits into the entire economic spectrum of things being done. And all of this is, of course, demonstrated from your projects or publications or work experience. So once you have entered into one of these programs and you have your admission, for a master's program, what you need to do is plan out your electives, because there's no fixed set of courses. You have to decide what you want to learn. So typically you will be talking to professionals and professors to get an understanding of what is important to learn, like in the field that you are interested in. Understand what are the important things being considered as the best methods to apply to that field. And as a result, you have to do a survey of professionals and professors who have an idea about this, and choose your courses accordingly. Also engage in a sufficient number of projects so that you can go beyond the current state of the art, and always publish your results, right? So no matter what you're doing, and this advice also applies to people who are right now in their bachelor courses, right? So you'll do pretty much the same thing for your electives and your extracurricular projects there as well. So, and always publish your results, which is what you want to do is essentially build a portfolio of your work, which is not just shown in your report cards and grades, but also things that you can actually go and show the outside world in the form of publications, or maybe it's a blog, or maybe it's a website that you have built where you can show show a record of the work that you have done. So this helps quite a bit in advertising what your capabilities are. At the PhD level, what you're looking for is deepening your understanding of the theory and techniques, as well as broadening, as well as keeping track of everything that's going on in the field. So attend a lot of conferences, winter and summer schools, where you not only look at research that is relevant to the work that you are doing, but also keeping track of every other researcher and every other person and every other line of thought that is happening in that field. Right, so these conferences and gatherings of researchers are very, very important for that. Also collaborate with a lot of people, work with professionals, and work with leading experts in that field. So this helps you build your network, and it also helps you broaden your understanding of things and think about problems from different angles, and also makes people aware of who you are as a person. Again, the same advice as before, which is always publish your work, patent. In this case, you're also working on cutting edge methods. So always consider before publishing whether something is patentable. So, and at this point, you're looking to finish your portfolio, not building one, but rather finishing it. So you might have started building a portfolio during your bachelor's and master's. And by the end of your PhD, you should have a pretty complete portfolio to be more or less a leader in that field and to be a big shot in the field that you're looking to work in. And mentor a lot of people during your PhD years and later, because this is very much a part of the job that you are going to be looking for. So typically, when you're finishing your PhD, you're already an expert on your technical problems and technical domain. And what is expected from the industry, like what the industry or professional world expects from you, is some leadership in that area. So you're typically going to be working with a lot of other people who are at the level of their bachelor's or master's, and you want to be able to work with them and allow the advantage of the cutting edge methods that you have developed to spread around and to allow other people to use it as well. So get a lot of experience working with students, working with other outside company professionals, and this will allow you to develop some of your managerial skills and mentorship skills. And take formal courses in business and management, because this is one of the most important things that you will do anytime in your professional career. Is when you're developing cutting edge methods, you also want to know how to monetize those methods and how to monetize the work that you have done. So formal courses in business and management at that point, I think, are very important. And what you're looking for after as opportunities after your bachelor's or master's program is you can go to the next level of the education system, or you can go into an industrial position after your bachelor's and master's. And as you proceed through your career, either through your industrial positions or through a PhD, you're typically getting into more cutting edge research. You're getting into the domain where you're now very independent, both financially and intellectually. So you will want to start a company at your from what you have done. You are also looking for business and technology leadership positions. And this is where some of those skills that you picked up during your PhD are very important, where to be a good leader, you also have to essentially be a good mentor, and you have to be good at what you do. So keeping in mind that you're typically aiming for some kind of leadership in the industry, you have to develop some kind of managerial business acumen and also mentoring skills. So these aren't just check boxes that you want to take off, but also very essential qualities for advancing your career later down the line. And I think that was more or less what I wanted to discuss as a fixed agenda. But it would be better now if we make the session a little bit more interactive and go over the slides or talk about something that was not on the slides and answer some of your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Sanket. People, you can post your questions on the chat box if you want, if you have any questions that you want to ask. Okay.
Hi, can we just unmute ourselves and ask a
Yeah, yeah,
question?
that would also. That would
Okay.
also.
Hi, Sanket. This is Mithilesh. I'm in my DD. I'm a DD student, fourth year in EE.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that comes up always is how passionate do you have to be? I mean, it's like, at least for me, at least there are some fields which I like, some I don't. But how do you decide if it's worth diving deep if you are still not very sure? I mean, I spoke to one of the professors, and he said that even if you're not very passionate, PhD develops a way of thinking, which is useful anywhere, irrespective of what your subject is. So, what are your views on that? I mean, is it just the way we do a bachelor's for improving our analytical thinking? Do you think even if I have a slight interest in one of the topics, it's worth going for a PhD, especially for the other skills which you mentioned, right? The business part, the
Yes, I think that's
uh,
definitely the case, because one of the things is your progress in with any of these skills is not dependent on whether you do your master's or PhD or so on. Like the formal degree doesn't give you those skills, but rather the work that you do during that. So you could also go into the industry and develop those same skills. But the difference is that in the industry, uh, the the primary motivation of the organization is in sustaining their business and doing their everyday business activities. So it's not the organization isn't designed specifically for your personal growth, whereas the university is by design meant for your personal growth. Like the professors are also incentivized and promoted on the basis of how many people they mentored, how many PhDs they graduated, and how many papers were published by their students, and so on. So there's a lot of economic incentivization in mentoring others. So as a result, universities are much more have a much more structured way of ensuring that you're growing in these directions. So if you have the opportunity to go do a PhD, yes, definitely go do it. Passion is kind of important, but however, passion is a little bit important to have uh, in the field that you're doing your PhD in, because when you're working on cutting edge problems, they're by no means easy. So you need you need to be able to face failures, and you need to be able to uh, face difficulties during your PhD and still be motivated enough to keep going at the problem. right? So if you're not motivated to solve a particular problem, what is going to happen is you'll lose energy and interest, and you will typically then have to find another problem to go at, right? So in general, you don't want to be wasting time during your PhD by, where you're constantly changing problems and getting demotivated or things like that. So you want to have a good understanding of what you're going to aim for during your PhD, and some amount of passion to sustain you through all the like the troublesome times, right? The other thing is that PhDs, like uh, the universities are also very good incubation centers, right? So they're aiming for your personal growth, and they're also, especially during the PhD, they're aiming for things like startups coming out of it or patents coming out of it. So there's an economic incentive to knowing what you're doing, and as a result, by the end of your PhD, you have something concrete that you come out with, and you can use that to advance your uh, commercial interest. Like you could start a company, or you could sell things off to a company. You could join a company at a pretty senior position. But this is all dependent on whether you were passionate and you had specific understanding of the field or not, as you are starting your PhD. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Makes sense.
Hello. Hi, Sanket. I'm Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
I actually wanted to talk about the imposter syndrome. I mean, I'm presently part of two research projects, and I've been a part of another one as well. And what I've noticed is that at some point of time, the imposter syndrome just drops in and just ruins my life. So, what do you suggest? I mean, how can I get over this? And yeah,
Yeah, I think it's quite common to feel that way. Like you are supposed, like your outer appearance is better than what you actually are, uh, and that's part and parcel of what you're doing, because there's a saying called "fake it till you make it," right? So you're often aiming for something better than what you already are, and what you better than what you already have. And in order to get there, you have to show some level of confidence and show some level of competency, in the sense to build confidence in the person hiring you, to say that, all right, he can get there eventually. So understand that that's already a fact, that you are by default aiming for something better than what you already have. So you are going to feel a little bit like an imposter during this time, but that is what is going to spur your growth, in order to try and become the person you're trying to become. Like the person you're pretending to be, you're trying to become that person and learning accordingly. And that is what will kind of guide you in terms of what you should learn, and what you should be doing during your time in your research. Is there something else that I missed, maybe?
no, I think it's pretty much conclusive. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
We have few questions in the chat box. Madhav asks, how do you think one chooses a specific topic? One should choose a specific topic for a PhD.
Yeah, so this is typically done during your research projects, right? So when you're working on, so during your bachelor, especially, work on a lot of varied research projects, or even things like electronics projects or robotic projects, or whatever extracurricular technical projects you can engage in. And that way you can gauge what everything is about, like how which area deals with what kind of ideas, and then pick something that you actually like. The other thing is talk to a lot of professionals. So people in the industry, talk to professors who are working in these different fields, and try to understand from them what the trends are in the industry and where the world is trying to go. So a lot of people have been doing research and development for before you have even started your studies, right? So there's already an established trend and established momentum to the industry. So now that you have joined in between, you need to start talking to people who are already in the flow of that industry and ask them where the industry is going and what are the important topics and what is it that you should be trying to learn. And especially during your masters, when you're working on your master thesis or projects and you're doing a lot of these state of the art covering courses, you already start to get an understanding of where each of these fields are going. And if you like what you're doing, it's uncommon that you will not like one of these things or anything that's being done. If that's the case, then I don't think like you should be going for a PhD or you should be continuing in one of these fields, which you, after say 5 or 6 years of seeing what things are like, if you're not liking those things, then it's probably not a place where you should be heading towards. But in general, you should find something that you at least moderately like, and then start investigating if you can do well in that field. Like you need to have some level of vision in terms of, hey, what is it that I want to do with my work life?
I hope that answers you, Madhav. We have another question from Gayatri. That is, what is the difference between PhD in a university versus a PhD in an industrial research program like IBM?
Yeah. I think one of the things in industry research programs is that you are on an everyday basis working with people who are working on industrial problems. So it's less often blue sky research, less often things that are purely theoretical in nature, and more things that are of everyday concern to the industrial programs. However, this can be a disadvantage because there can be a tunnel vision kind of effect in that case, because things that are very important for the industry and that work on a very short time scale may not be the best ways or best solutions to do it, and you can get tunnel visioned into some topics. So university programs are less like that because they're not heavily focused on everyday industry problems, but rather on general trends in the industry and directions that are promising. So there's a lot more potential for doing theoretical research as well as things that are disruptive to the industry. Like an industrial program would very rarely try to do something that's disruptive to their own business or business interests. I think that's it.
Yeah. I think Sumantak has something to ask. I hope I've pronounced it right.
Yeah. Hi, Ankit. So I wanted to ask you, most of the students who pursue PhD exclusively apply to American universities. Although EPFL and ETH are really good in terms of ranking and recognition. So what made you apply to EPFL, and did you apply to other American universities as well?
Yeah, so I did apply to a lot of the American universities as well. But I went to EPFL specifically because there was a project there that was very much aligned to what I wanted to work on. So, and EPFL also has a good work-life balance, and you paid a lot better in Switzerland as a PhD student. So you also come out of the PhD program with a comfortable financial situation. But the most important thing is that it's a it has to be a program that or project that you really feel passionate about, and it's aligned with the kind of things that you want to do after your PhD.
So thank you for answering that. And I had another question specific to EPFL. So I had heard like in EPFL, all PhD students just join, and then after only 1 year there is a test, and if they pass that, then they continue working on their dedicated field. Otherwise, they're not allowed to pursue their PhD. Is this true?
Yeah, this is true. And this is common everywhere, right? So even in American universities, at the end of your first year, you have to pass a qualifying exam, which is actually, I think, more difficult in the American universities, in the sense that these are the way you pass your qualifying exam is you take a fixed set of courses that you choose, and then you write written exams regarding those courses, and you have to pass those courses with good grades, and they're fairly advanced courses as well. In the EPFL system, your qualifying exam is basically just a presentation. So like you have a defense presentation at the end of your PhD. It's similar to that in the sense that you just show what you have done in your first year of research, and you present a research plan of what you're going to do further down the line. So in the next 2 or 3 years. And if the jury of members sitting there is satisfied with your research progress and your research plan, then they say that, okay, you can go ahead. And it's very rare that you actually fail any of these exams, right? So typically, if you have gotten into a PhD program, they already know that you're good enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired you. And yeah, so it's very rare that somebody would fail either in the written qualifying exams in the US or in these presentation-like exams. It's mostly meant to ensure that you're on the right track and have the right plan going forward.
Thank you for answering. Yeah.
Yeah, Vaibhav has one question. Being interested in core electrical and not very much fascinated by research, master seems to be a viable option. It's his personal opinion. What do you suggest? Also, what is recommended doing masters just after bachelor's or after a few years of industrial experience?
I would say get over with your education as contiguously as possible. So if you want to do your master's, just do it after the bachelor's itself. And there's not really a point of taking like industrial experience in between, because if you look at my slides where I was writing down what the industrial expectations are after. Sorry, do you have the slides to look at or not right now?
I'm sorry, you mean to say screen?
Yeah, so sorry, I can share the screen now.
Yeah, it's visible.
So here, basically, I was talking about what the industrial expectations are, right? So after, like when you're freshly graduated out of your bachelor's program, when you go for your interviews for placements and things like that, the minimum expectation that the interviewer has from you is that you're good at the basics, and you have the ability to learn further, right? So because during your bachelor program, you haven't even touched the current state of the art of the field. So they do definitely expect that you're going to learn further, either on the job or by doing masters or something else, and then come to the industry with good understanding of the state of the art. So this is something you can attain by just learning on the job. So in 2 years time, say you work for 2 years in the industry, at the end of the second year, you should already be an expert in the state of the art of the field. But if you don't go to the industry, you can just go to a master's program, get good at the current state of the art, and then join the industry directly at that point. where you would anyways have been 2 years later. So it doesn't make sense to kind of work, get an expertise in the state of the art, and then go do a master's, because you're just repeating the same thing over and over again. And the same thing applies to the master to PhD transition as well.
I hope that answers your question, Vaibhav. Devang has one more question. What kind of roles, especially like leadership and managerial, can one expect and aim for post PhD in corporate world or industry?
So typically, companies are divided into 3 or 4 units. So one is the engineering unit or technology unit, where there are engineers who are developing products and maintaining products, right? The other unit is a business unit that handles the delivery or the supply chain of those products. So it's buying raw materials and talking to the customers and clients and making sure everything is going through correctly. The third unit is the business decision making unit, right? So this is where typically the very high ranking members of the company would come in, where there are the CEOs or the directors and the research scientists who are basically trying to solve the problem of what is it that we should be making going into the future. Because this is where a startup like environment exists inside a company. Whereas when a new company is being formed, the founders are essentially thinking about what products should I be making and how should I be entering into the market to get the best revenue streams. So once a company is already formed and there's a line of products in it, this side of the equation is somewhat stabilized. So there are existing products, and all you have to do is either make new versions of them or advance them in some way, or maintain the existing products, and then maintain the supply chains so as to have a stable revenue stream. But while this is happening, it's not like the CEO is sleeping and doing nothing. They are typically working on the business decision making unit side, where they're constantly trying to see how the business is evolving, what are the new products and new streams that new revenue streams that could be exploited with existing products or new products. And this is where you come in as a PhD or as a top business decision maker, because you have a good handle on where the technology is heading and where the technology currently is. You can have a lot of good insights into what you should be making in the future. And this is not just a technical thing. Like, this is something that you have to learn as a PhD, not just the technical side of it, but also in terms of how every technological product that you build fits into the economic scenario of the world. So if you are building, say, a particular piece of circuit let's say we are trying to build electric vehicles, and you're building a circuit to drive the motors in this electric vehicle. As a PhD, one of the skills that you're developing is the ability to abstract things out. So even if you're building a circuit to drive an electric vehicle, you understand that the same circuit can be applied to 10 other applications as well, just by changing small elements or doing small things here or there, right? So this ability to abstract things out is what business decision makers need, because they want to use the same existing products or new products being developed and look at all the possibilities that exist for generating revenue. Other things like patents are also very important, because you're trying to protect your business. So how to control your intellectual property and how to invest your existing revenue streams into building new ones is where this third unit comes in. And you'll find a lot of PhDs and very highly educated and extremely experienced industrial professionals working in these kind of business units. So even if you do your PhD or not, I think that's a pretty exciting place for anyone to be in. So even if you're just going through your bachelor's and master's program, you're typically aiming for positions in such business units where, but to get there, you have to obviously learn the business and the technology side of things just as well as you would learn if you were a PhD. So you might as well get a degree for it, is what I'm saying.
Thank you so much for that. I think Aaron has a question. Aaron has raised his hand.
Yeah. So, since you had done your PhD at Epsl, did you face any language issue? As in, many people over there speak Dutch, French, and German, right? So,
Yeah.
did you?
No, so the university is pretty like there's a lot of multicultural presence and multinational presence in the university. So most of the things are done in English. And so you'll never face any problem in your everyday university life. When you go outside the university, yes. So EPFL is in Lausanne, so you have to pick up on French a little bit to be able to interact with the local people there. But you never are stuck anywhere because you don't know the local language. Everything is available in English as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Sumedh has one question. What are your views on pursuing a PhD after Btec as compared to after dual degree?
Yeah, so if you're very sure about the field that you want to work on during your PhD, then yes, go ahead and apply to the PhD program directly. And if you get in, that's great. And just start your PhD directly. Like there's no real need to go through a master's and then a PhD, because you can always learn things on the job. So when you're doing your PhD, you can get up. Anyways, one of the parts of your PhD is getting up to speed with the current state of the art or the current cutting edge research. So you can use that time to pick up on things that you would have otherwise learned during your master program. So you can actually save time as well.
Do we have any other questions? You can also unmute yourself directly. Okay, Bhavesh has a question that when did you decide to vote for PhD, like in which semester?
So for me, doing a PhD was kind of decided pretty early on because I wanted to work on dynamics and control systems, especially aerodynamic systems like aircrafts and things like that. And during my time at IIT, already by the second, third year, I was already doing a lot of courses on control theory. And I just kept discovering new things that I hadn't even heard about beforehand. So by the time I finished my my master's at IIT, I had a good idea of what the current state of the art of the research is in controls. But there was also a lot of things that I had just heard about, but I had never worked on or never studied and things like that. So it was already a very alluring thing to go and actually study those things. So control theory was a very clear topic for me to go and do my PhD in. So much so that I actually turned down PhD offers because they were not in that field. So that's one thing that you already know because of your own personal interests and what excites you about your specific field. And in this during your second or third year, you should already start working on topics that you could potentially pursue as a PhD, or something that you would like to work on in the industry. Suppose you don't want to do your PhD, but you want to work on a specific topic in the industry. So whether to go for a PhD or not is a choice that you can make much later down the line. But you already should have some idea of what technical field excites you more than others. So start working on those things. So start working on projects in that particular field. Start working with professors who work on that field, so that you have some idea of what is important to be learned, to look into, and where the good opportunities lie in that field.
I hope that answers your question, Bhavesh. Madhav has one more question. Yeah, is it mandatory to go for postdoctoral fellowship, and why did you choose this?
No, so the postdoctoral fellowship isn't mandatory at all, and it's useful only if you either want to become a professor, or if you have some research ideas that you're working on that aren't quite complete yet, but you can use the postdoctoral time to essentially finish those ideas and then monetize them as starting a company, or by selling off patents or things like that. So for me, it was a clear choice because I already patented a few things during my PhD, and then I wanted to essentially continue and eventually start a company to monetize those patents. So universities are excellent incubation centers. So you can go there, you can work on your ideas, and then there's a good IP sharing policy wherein you can file for patents or things like that, and also receive economic compensation for it. So in that sense, universities are some of the best places to work at.
Hello. So, hi, Sangeet. So, I was actually sometime back. I was going through a university's websites, and so what I noticed is that in some universities you barely get a choice. Like I'm interested in robotics, and so I barely get a choice. Like there are very few professors who really work in the field I'm interested in. But there are some universities where like there are multiple labs working on something that I'm interested in. So what do you suggest in the latter case? Because I can't apply to all of them, and almost all of them interest me the most. So, should I actually contact the students, or know something like that, or?
Okay, so before I answer that, what stage are you at currently?
I'm in I'm applying for my higher studies right now.
Okay, so you're in your fourth year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I hope that you already have some experience in robotic applications. You might have done some projects and so on, right?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then you're pretty well situated. Like you don't have a problem. You should start applying to universities where there are good projects and good professors working in those fields. And the typical process is that you send an email to a professor saying, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm quite interested in your work, and I have myself done a couple of things that are important. Write that, and then, hey, I'm applying for a PhD in your university or a master's in your university." Like this is mainly for PhDs, not masters actually. So write the email saying, "Hey, I'm applying for a PhD position in your university. I'm interested in these couple of projects that your lab is offering, or these papers that you have written are very interesting for me, something like that, showing how your background is relevant to his work and why you are interested in their work. And once you send out an email like that, along with your CV and things like that, typically the professor might respond and say, hey, I like your work as well, and you're welcome to join my thing or something like that. That's when you basically send your application into the university. And when you do this application, they give you an application number that you should keep with you. And once your application is done, just send the professor an email saying, hey, I have applied to the university. Here's my application number. And then the professor can actually go to the committee and say that, hey, this application number, I'm interested in this student. And then it's very likely that they'll accept you if a professor goes and says that, hey, I want this guy.
Yeah. So one of the key doubts I have is that, what should you do if you actually, I mean, I think I'm being over optimistic over here, but like just in case you get like more than one, I mean, acceptances, and and you don't want one of them, like what will you do in that case?
I'm sorry, there's some music coming across.
Yeah, sorry, it was called. So, what will you do if there are multiple, like you get, I mean, two acceptances and you don't want one of them, and you had actually contacted both the professors and kept in touch with them?
Yeah, that's not a problem. You can just write to the other professor saying, hey, I really want to thank you for the opportunity, but I also received this other project, and I would be happy to collaborate with you in the future, but I'm joining that university. Right?
Yep.
You don't. It's very common to basically be polite, but it's very common to say that, sorry, I'm going some other way.
Yep. Thanks.
Samantha had a question about university getting a part of royalty of the patent.
Yeah, so the typical structure is that you get 1/3 of the revenue. The lab that you worked in gets 1/3 of the revenue, and the university gets 1/3 of the revenue. So, and this is after deducting expenses. So the university will spend a lot of money to get you the patent for the lawyer fees and the patent maintenance fees. And so they deduct all of those expenses, and whatever extra profit is left over, that gets divided into 3 parts, like 1/3, 1/3, so on. And the logic behind it is basically that, hey, you did all the work, so you get 1/3. And the lab that you were working in was supporting the infrastructure and everything. So they get some part of it, and the university itself also gets some part. And the inventors 1/3 is obviously divided into like the number of inventors. So if there were 3 people who contributed to an invention, then that 1/3 gets divided further into 3 people shares. And this varies slightly university to university as well, but by and large, this is the kind of model that most universities use.
I guess we are done with the questions. I don't see any more questions here.
I just had one doubt.
Yeah.
Not exactly a doubt, but are there any? So we talked about why you should go. Are there any pointers as to if this is the case, then you should definitely not go for a PhD? I mean, do you have any such opinion about, let's say, the person's interests, or like, if this is the case, then you should definitely not go.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't discourage anyone from going for a PhD at any point, right? So because a PhD is a very useful structure to have in your life to enable your growth and your like it's a very structured process of growth. So it's always a positive experience most of the times. The only time you shouldn't go for a PhD is when you definitely know that, hey, I don't want to work on this field. So it's like if you were interested in, say, in my case, if I'm interested in control theory as a topic that I want to work on professionally and do my PhD in, but I'm getting a PhD offer that's for, say, optimizing something, optimizing some circuit design tool, then yeah, they're completely mismatched, right? So just because you're getting an opportunity to do a PhD, don't go into anything that you are getting. So that's one place where I would say, like, yeah, don't take up that offer. You can apply for another PhD position and get a PhD position later on as well. So don't get stuck into something that you know for sure that is not what you want to do, because the most important thing is, what do you want to do after your PhD? And that's the field that you should have your PhD.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I think there wasn't a question about it, but I had one advice that I could also give you about choosing your PhD supervisors, right? So there are a couple of ways in which you can try and see what PhD supervisor would be good for me. So one thing is, if you have done your bachelor's and master's and are very sure about the field that you want to work on, and if it's an experimental field, like, say, if you're in microelectronics and you are interested in designing solar cells or designing some kind of device structures with the intention of building something and then starting a company or developing IP in that field, work with somebody who is more experimental oriented, or who's actually developing, who has some kind of a track record in developing industrial technology and patenting it and so on. So who has a good background in transferring technology to the industry. And this you can check from the profile of the professor as to what he has done. Also check up on what their past PhD students, like graduated PhD students, are doing in the industry or in academia. And if you like what they're doing, then yeah, that's a good place to be. If you're looking more into theoretical research and like more intellectual brainy kind of research work, not here's a product that I'm building, then mostly look at what the professor is teaching. So if he's giving a lot of advanced courses for PhDs and masters and so on, and is a fairly senior professor to be doing all of these different courses, then that would be a good supervisor to have, because he's already into the mindset of teaching people something, and he has that mentoring mindset down. So he would be very good to have as a supervisor for something that's more theoretical. So this is how you can kind of gauge if the person is right for you or not as well.
Thank you so much, Sanket, for amazing session that we have had. And thank you very much to everybody who has joined in for your questions. I'm sure they must have helped other people as well. Yeah, again, I thank everybody for being here, for attending the session, and Sanket, especially you, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of Core Talks and yeah, being here. I think we can call it a day. What do you say?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nawashri. It was nice talking to all of you, and best of luck with anything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.